Hello. Today I'm talking with Lisa Crispin. We talked about how she stumbled into our industry and how learning herself to overcome her introversy gave her more empathy for others. I'm Ivanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Are you a Scrum or Agile enthusiast? Would you like to grow in your role? Or would you like to connect with peers around the world? Then the Online Scrum Master Summit is just for you. My name is Esther Schmid, and I'm the main host of this global summit. You can join us from the 17th to the 19th of June, all virtually. So join us because we have great keynotes, insightful talks, and hands-on workshops. So go to osms25.com and register for free. Looking forward to see you there.
Lisa Crispin, hello. Normally I ask how should I pronounce your name, but I hope that I did it correctly because we've known each other for quite a while. And I want to show for the people a little bit. Let me bring you on screen. So I'm living here, and if you
Oh,
you see
wow.
that blue dot, this is actually the old house that you visited, and the blue dot is where my new house is. But Google hasn't found it yet. So yeah, that's a little bit how it goes.
Google's a little slow there.
And if we're going, and this
Oh
is
my
faster
gosh,
than
that is
we
so
go to
cool.
Charlotte, where you should be. Of course, not in the exact location. I don't want to help stalkers. Yeah, helping out, figuring out where my guests are. But that's a little bit on where you are. And in Belgium, here on a Friday evening, it's 20 almost 20 minutes after 5 o'clock. What's the time on your side?
It is 20 after 12 noon.
So that's how we roll with a lot of time zone differences, a lot of miles differences. So this is how things are. So welcome, Lisa. For the few people that don't know you, what do you want people to know about you?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Eve. And I just love all your Who is Agile. I've learned so many things about people through your books and your videos and
Thank
everything.
you.
Um, but what should people know about me? I'm a tester by trade. I've been in the software business more than 40 years. Started as a
Wow.
programmer, but mostly as a tester. And what I've always liked the most is being part of a self-organizing team where we work together to create a great product and make our customers happy and enjoy ourselves while we do it. But a few years ago, I got a bit burned out, and so it's hard to find those good teams sometimes. And not because of the team, but because of corporate BS. So
Mm.
I switched to independent consulting, and that has been really nice because it gives me a lot of, because I'm not very good at, well, the tech industry has been a little difficult the last few years. So I haven't had a huge ton of paid work, but I have time to give back to the community because I've helped so many people over all these decades. And now I can help with open source projects, with people's pet projects. I help people who want to get into conference speaking. I help conferences reviewing proposals and things like that. So it's really nice to have time to give back finally. And I live
Mm.
in Northwest Vermont, as you showed. Our town is on the shores of beautiful Lake Champlain, which is 100 miles long. I'm not sure how many kilometers that is. And we have a little farm with 4 donkeys, four
True.
cats, a dog, and my husband Bob.
Indeed. And well, you didn't mention it, but I think we can show it on the screen as well.
Oh
You
yeah, the
wrote quite
books.
a couple of books that you keep forgetting. Yeah, that is to most of the books I think you wrote together with Janet.
Yes, I would be
Uh,
nothing without Janet and Gregory. We are a pair.
mm.
We have another book that's not on there. Holistic Testing is our latest book. So
Hmm.
uh, we
And I
published
think
that last fall.
you wrote something about testing even before the agile testing book.
Yeah,
I
testing extreme
realized I didn't put
programming. Yeah, that was an oldie but
exactly.
a goodie. Yeah, with
Uh,
Tip House. But Janet and I have collaborated on so many things over the years, and she's trying to retire, and it's really hard on me. But she's still good about giving me guidance, and she's my
Mm.
idea person. So, but she's
Well, yeah,
off
you're
painting. She's
that.
doing beautiful paintings now. So,
I was about to say you're really a dynamic duo. Always, yeah, the things that you've written together.
hmm
Yeah, that is yeah something that I think this is probably why I added mostly these books, and I forgot the old book.
no, but it's like, and the new book's pretty new, so you probably didn't know about that one. But
I
it's
didn't
and
know, but I've
yeah.
well the thing is I did take the original slides from the talk that I did with Janet, and then I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
update it. And so today, while I showed it, I was like, oh, actually, I should have added another book there as well, and I
And
didn't think about.
Janet's written even more books than that, so she just can't seem to stop.
Yeah, that's yeah, that I didn't know. I only knew the ones. Let me see if I can bring
No
that
worries,
other
no
book.
worries. People can find it.
Uh, yeah, exactly. Well, still, I was hoping because I do like that's how I discovered your book in the first place. I do like to bring the extreme testing book
Oh, there
there
you
as
go.
well. So I added it now. Let's show it like
I
this.
still get people saying that they thought that book was really helpful back in the day. So, and when I go back and read it, I think, well, it's still relevant.
Well,
Not that
that's
many
that's
people do
how that's
extreme
how I
programs.
discovered you. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
uh, like you said, quite a while ago. Anyway, I think that's a really nice introduction, and like you said, you've been going on for quite a while into our community. I think both you and Janet, you made again much more emphasis to testing, because in the beginning of Agile, some people had a tendency to say, oh, we don't need testers for Agile, which is actually something wrong. I think you've proven that right, that it's still valuable. And so yeah, I think that is really important, that what you've done. Let's move to that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Well, everybody knows how I've had donkeys, so that's not one.
I
Uh,
was thinking maybe you should say that, but probably, yeah, indeed, most people by now know that you have donkeys. I
but
think the picture of you with your donkeys is probably more known than a picture without your donkeys.
some conferences try to cut that out, like, cut out the donkey. I'm like,
Mm,
no, focus on the donkey. But no, I think most people don't know I'm actually extremely shy,
mm.
but I have developed this persona to be able to participate in the world. Uh,
Just to make sure
oh,
that
you're
we
just showing the
talked
picture.
about the donkey, let's make sure that we show the
There's
picture as well.
Ernest. He's the best. I think I
So
always
yeah.
look better with an animal in the picture. That's for sure.
Okay, so you're shy. That is something that I think indeed not many people would suspect you.
I mean, so shy
Suspect
that
you.
when I was in school, the teacher would contact my mother and it's like, oh, she doesn't talk. She doesn't really have friends.
And look
And
at you now. You have friends around the world.
I know. And I can't exactly tell you how I got over it, except that I realized even in school that if I raised my hand and asked questions and talked, I learned more. I enjoyed myself more. It was hard to force myself to do that,
Hmm.
but I was kind of rewarded for doing that. So I've kind of taught myself. But anytime, even like a call like this with an old friend like you, it's it's like, oh gosh, I got to be on this video call.
Hmm.
So years of practice have changed it, but it's still there. And how has it helped me? I don't know. It certainly helped me overcome it, but maybe it gives me more empathy for people who also, I think a lot of people that we work with are shy or introverted, which I understand is a different thing, but um, understanding people's energy levels and stuff is really important.
Hmm. Yeah, I do think I do agree there that there is definitely difference, um, and but it's like you say, it's good that you understand that you can bring your if you can bring yourself, because not everybody is able to do that. So
Hmm.
let's also not make sure that we don't blame people for not being able to do. But if you're able to do that, that in many cases it brings a lot of value, and I think that's good for people to realize that. Okay, and then it's so nice that people like you bring it out and say, like, you know what, when I was younger, that wasn't me. I learned to do this. I'm very similar in that case, that I was very introverted in my case, reading all the time, not being, yeah, I do remember going to youth club where people were sitting and there was a kind of bar and we could dance and stuff like that. But there were moments that I was just there reading a book because that's how I felt. Like at that moment, I didn't feel like I want to interact. And there were later moments I would interact and I would dance, but there was moments that I would say, no, I just want to read. And is that something for you as well? Were you a big reader when you were younger, or?
Yeah, I was a huge reader. Absolutely, absolutely. And and it was the a lot of times I didn't learn like childhood games and stuff in it, so it was hard to join in,
Mm.
right? Like I didn't know how to jump rope with two people jump turn. I never have learned how. I still can't do it. And at my school, the girls at recess, that's all they did. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, so I might go sit down and read something.
Because yeah, the game that they were playing was not something you liked or knew how to do, and then it's
And I was
it's
too
very
shy to learn, right? So,
exactly, and then it's really hard to get out of that movement, because yeah, and I've seen that with a lot of kids. Like, yeah, whatever they do in the beginning, it might be something you don't know, or you don't know how to interact, and before you know it, you're out of the group, and then it's harder later to get in because they're like, "Oh, this is that strange little shy kid," and they don't understand, and they think, "Oh, you're not interested," and maybe it's because one game doesn't interest you. That doesn't mean you're not interested in the rest, of course.
yeah,
Uh,
and I mean, thinking back about donkeys, before I had donkeys, I had horses. And so I think kind of what saved me was having riding horses and caring for horses at a very young age. I started riding when I was
mm.
3. And people use horses for therapy and donkeys for therapy and things like that now. And it's like I think I accidentally got therapy from
You give
horses.
yourself your own therapy. Mm.
Yeah, and then I could enter, like there were organizations for kids to join with their horses to learn horsemanship and horse care and all those kind of things. And so that was activities that I understood and that I could participate in. And so that's how I made my friends, right? So that was a happy accident. And so I think equines have played a big role in my whole life.
And how did you start with that, with
Well,
horses and donkeys and everything?
uh, my mother would take us. My parents belonged to a club that had a riding stable,
Mm.
and there were horses you could rent. And so my mother would take us. She grew up on a farm, and she'd take us riding. I can remember being led around on King, the horse, and when I was 3, and one of my older sisters got the horse bug as well. And I think it was lucky there were 2 of us begging our parents, please buy us a horse. Um, so that helped. And also, there were always horses or ponies around that their owners weren't riding them enough and wanted somebody to ride them. So there was always something I could ride. And just just lucky that my parents were supportive of that. And I think my mother was like, even through high school, it's like, oh, thank goodness. Well, this horse thing's kind of an expensive hobby, but on the other hand, I don't have to worry about him dating boys. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so they were very supportive, and yeah, it really was an interesting sort of channel of growth.
Mm. That's and I can definitely see how a lot of that influenced your life. Well, from being, well, shy and not talking to people, to, okay, having horses and connect and having a hobby, and then your accidental therapy, like you call it. I really, yeah, that definitely brings a lot of things. And if we see, or if I see how much your donkeys are part of your persona, I would almost say, they're part of your. You use things to explain in some of your conference talks, or at least use their pictures if there is an opportunity for that. It's definitely something that helps connect. Yeah, I think that's a very nice thing to see. Let's move to that second question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, you have any idea what would have become of you?
I'm sorry. My my Mac did go to sleep. If I had not been, if I don't wasn't doing what I do now, what would become of you? I don't think I would be a very successful person.
Hmm.
I was one of those people who stumbled into a programming job without any training or experience. My undergraduate degree was in animal science because when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be what they call here a county agent, somebody who
Hmm.
helps farmers that have better ways to raise their livestock and stuff. And unfortunately, I went to college in the mid 70s, and I learned early on in my college career that I was not going to be able to get that job because I was a woman, and I was not strong enough then to fight the patriarchy. So then I got an MBA. Uh, so I had my beef cattle production degree, and then it's like, well, I don't know what else to do, so I got an MBA, and I had a research job for a couple of years with a government agency that was super fun. But then Reagan got elected, and all those programs got defunded, and well, I need a job now. When I went out looking for a job, people wouldn't hire me because I didn't have any real world experience because academia or research, government jobs
Hmm.
are not the real world. Um, I don't know what I would end up doing. I applied to work at a zoo, but the pay was so terrible, and I had 2 horses to support.
So
Uh,
yeah,
so to see the sign in the University of Texas employment office that says computer programmer trainees wanted, no experience necessary, I'm like, well, that speaks to me. So that's how I got into it, and I really don't know what other direction I could have gone. The only thing, my dreams as a child, besides being a county agent, was I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to live on a ranch with
you
horses.
kind of do both of these
And
together.
I did achieve. It's not. I thought I'd be a fiction writer. But I enjoy writing, and I live on a ranch. I just have donkeys instead of horses. So I achieved those things, but whether I could have paid for them without getting into computers,
That's a whole
I'd like to
different
think about
thing.
it.
And well, and yeah, we can discuss is if testing, if writing about testing and is fiction or non-fiction, because sometimes what software people make, they think it's working, and actually you show them with your testing that it's actually fiction what they're writing, that it's not
Yeah,
working.
yeah, that's true. That's
Uh,
true. But
Many
even,
stuff.
even
Yeah.
when I got into programming, I enjoyed it, but I thought, well, I'll do this until I figure out what I really want to do.
Hmm.
And, you know, some years went by and I went, I actually do enjoy this. I'm just going to stick with it.
And
So,
I think that's also something that I've learned over the years, that many people see, there is some idea in many people that you think you have to follow your passion. And actually what science has shown us is that a lot of people discover their passion by doing it and keep doing
mhm,
it. It's like, oh, I do. and and I think that's the same thing even for sport people. They might start in a certain way when they're young, and they're not as passionate as when they're then older and becoming famous with things. It's also a passion that grew in many cases, and I think that's is very similar to what you describe here. Like, okay, I stumbled into it. I thought, okay, let's use it to pay for my horses,
right,
and
right.
then along the way I discover I'm good at it. I like it. And then you discover that actually yeah, it allows you to connect with more people talking about it,
Hmm.
and writing them with Janet. So yeah. So looks like you stumbled upon what is the real thing that it is for you.
And
Let's move.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I say, and I keep doing it even though I'm well past retirement age now because I just enjoy it so much.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. You're passionate and you keep doing some of that stuff. I will talk about passion later on. Let's
Okay.
first take the question about what do you consider your biggest challenge, and at least the biggest challenge you want to share openly on the internet, of course. And why is that
Why
a
is
good
this a good thing? I mean, I think my biggest challenge is just, self-esteem and imposter syndrome. That's always plagued me.
thing?
I was raised in an era where, I had a wonderful education and supportive parents, but I was not raised with the idea that I was going to go out in the world and get a job, right?
Mm.
I was the tail end of the generation that, well, you'll go to college, but you'll meet a man and you'll marry him, and that'll be what you do. even
And
though,
then
even though my mother helped my father start his business and she always worked. I mean, she was a great role model, but even so, she didn't encourage us to think
to do
about what
the
our
same.
careers might be. Yeah. And and so I think that's partly why it's like, well, I'm not really worthy, or I got into programming through this on the job training. I don't have a computer science degree. I don't really, it turns out you don't need one, but but it still made me feel potentially less able than the people who have them, and especially, accepting present company. There's a lot of patriarchy out there of, well, this is too technical for you, little lady. So,
Mm.
um, like I remember trying to learn assembler after I'd been a programmer for a few years, and I couldn't learn it. I just couldn't do it. Probably because I didn't want to, or it's like if you didn't enjoy it, you're not going to keep at it. Like I could do
Well, yeah,
COBOL, I could do other languages, but do
I
Visual
had
Basic.
assembler in school, back in school, and I was really happy that I never had to look at it again because, like, yeah, I really understand why we invented other languages that would generate an assembler below,
Hmm.
and that's all what I need. I'm like, yeah,
Right.
this assembler is really much more written for a computer than for a human being, and other languages are much more written for humans to understand. And maybe some assembler gurus will disagree with me, but yeah, looking at the number of people that are actually needing or doing assembler real life, not just studying it for fun, but actually doing it on a day-to-day basis, or maybe on a week or on a year-to-year basis, maybe not every day. I would still assume that, yeah, the other languages are much easier to understand and much more adapted for humans, I would say. Now, you talked about the imposter syndrome that as a challenge. Why is that a good thing for you? What part about it makes it good for
I
you?
don't, I don't, it's, like I say, I'm not sure how it helped me, but it was weird that I kind of, in spite of that, I had the confidence I could learn what I needed to know.
Hmm.
And maybe because, well, I was always good at learning. I enjoy learning. And my first programming job was a wonderful training program where, you learn together with your whole cohort. There's a lot of collaboration. The previous cohort who just learned it trained you. I think it's the best person to train you is somebody who just learned it because they really understand how to teach it. Um, and just the fact that I was able to learn those things just made me like I'd start a new job. It's like, oh well, this is a different programming language or a different type of business domain, but I'm sure I can learn it. And I think it's in spite of my self-doubt, I know I can learn things. And I
Hmm.
think that's been a big help.
Yeah, and not just learn things, you write about things so others can learn it as well. So
Well,
that's for me
that's
the next
interesting.
level.
That's interesting you brought that up because my very first job, learning on the job, we had, this is 1982. And I'm like, where's the user manual? Well, there was a user manual, but it was completely useless. And we had to learn from like watching beta videotapes, how to learn COBOL, and oh my gosh. And I thought, this is terrible. And so when I get better at this, I'm going to write better user manuals for people. And I right away in my first job, we had this whole education program, and like my second year there, they made me director of the education program. We done not only educated our staff, but also we used a 4GL that we taught to staff in the academic departments so that they could do their own reports and simple user interfaces and stuff. So we trained all these people. And so like right away I was into training people and documenting things, and I've stuck with that. I love, I've had the opportunity to work with my team to redo our knowledge base and help system for our end users of our web-based application. I just love doing that because it's like, it doesn't have to be hard. We can just make this available, this information understandable and available and searchable. So yeah, that's been part of my motivation, kind of almost unconsciously, because I just always wanted to do it and enjoyed doing it. And I didn't start writing articles for magazines back when we had magazines, or anything like that until around 2000, early 2000s, after I joined an extreme programming team. But still, I love doing internal stuff.
It, yeah, I can see the links between these things. Indeed, it's not just learning from yourself, but then indeed making things available again to others. So definitely.
And what's the
And
best way to learn something? Teach it to somebody else. So you have to
oh
learn to
yeah,
teach it.
I definitely, yeah. Every time I teach something, I learn something at a deeper level. That's definitely true. So yeah, teaching is a good way of learning, and that kind of shows, and that's also what you talked earlier about before, your drive and your passion. Do you know where that drive and that passion is coming from?
Well, first of all, I had to support these equines. They're really expensive.
So the first drive was money. That's, or at least
Yeah.
helping the
Well,
animals
I
that
mean,
you support.
seriously, you've got living creatures that you're responsible for, and their care is very expensive, and especially when I got into competing with my horses. I used to compete in dressage and things like that. Getting the training and stuff. I mean, that was my whole avocation, right? It was like a second full-time job, but you need to make money, and you always, I got to make myself a desirable employee. And I also learned early in my career from other people that job security is all in your mind. Now, I think that's changing today, but back in the day, if you believe you can get another job, you can get another job because you have the skills and people will want you. And but you have to keep yourself. You have to keep learning and stay on the leading edge of things so that people do want to hire you. Um, and so that's part of what motivated me. But it's also, I just I just want there to be healthy software teams where people enjoy working, so that they can create products that their customers like, make their customers happy. Um, so early in you mentioned the extreme programming and agile in the early days. We don't need no stinking testers. I thought that's so wrong. I mean, Janet and I both like, hello. Uh, but also, I kind of was like, oh, I want to make the world safe for testers. I think testing specialists, quality engineers, whatever you want to call them, we bring a lot to the party. Maybe not every team needs us, but they need to do testing. They need to build quality in, and so you know learning and experimenting and collaborating with my team to understand, well, how can I best contribute, and then sharing that experience and learning from other people's experience. I think making the world safe for testers was one of my early drivers. And now it's just there, we have the knowledge to do a good job. There's a lot of things in our way, and it's usually upper management, but the knowledge is out there. People know how to do things well. And to try to just spread those ideas and encourage people to give it a try.
I really like that, and indeed, it's just like when you say make it safer for testers, it's helping the whole community. First of all, of course, in the company you're working with, but with your books and with all your your workshops and every training that you did, and even certifications that you created, or that small extra community, you yeah, make it available for much more people, I would say, than just the companies that you're working in, and indeed. Because, like you say, sometimes the work we do in some companies, it's harder to change because of management, and by making much more people aware about it, it might also help the companies of the future, because yeah, the people that are doing things are the managers of the future, of course, and
Yeah, that's true.
so that they do learn a lot
Hmm.
about these kind of things, I assume. So let's move with all of that to what do you consider your biggest achievement. And before we jump into that, what I've noticed on the show is that for basically this is your moment to brag and to be really proud. Is that easy for you to brag?
No, I think like a lot of people, like hide your light
That's
under a
that's why I'm
bushel,
asking
right?
the question, because indeed
Yeah.
a lot of people find it difficult.
And again,
Um,
that's maybe my generation, but we were certainly brought up of,
you have to be
don't
humble.
brag, don't, yeah, you have to be humble. And even, I
Mm.
mean, my mom she was a great mom, but I would do things that I thought were really great, and she wasn't too impressed by it. you know? So, it's not that she disliked me or anything like that, but she just thought, you know, well,
Yeah,
whoop-de-doo,
just.
good for you. I mean, she just thought you shouldn't brag about those things. And,
Mm.
um,
So this is your moment to then do this. So what, Lisa, are you, yeah, do
I
you
guess I'm
think is
most
your biggest achievement?
proud of, taking the risk and taking the time when when I joined my first extreme programming team, and like I have no idea what I should be doing, and my team doesn't have a clear idea what I should be doing. We've got these extreme programming books that don't even mention testers.
Hmm.
um, that I took what we did learn and then connected with Janet, thanks to Brian Marick, and she was working on a great team too, and that we could bring that together. And I was like, there were all these books coming out about extreme programming. There was a whole series from Addison Wesley. And I'm like, what about testing? What about testing? And I was trying to get other people to write a book. These XP leaders in the beginning, Kent Beck and Ron Jeffries and people like that. Like, somebody should write a book about testing. And they're like, well, why don't you write a book about testing? Like,
That's
I
a
don't
good
know.
way to yeah. Uh, yeah, I
And
really like that approach. So you care enough about it. Why don't you write it?
yeah, so taking that jump off the cliff and getting somebody, getting Tip House to write it with me, and getting into a whole strange world of writing and publishing a book. It's like, wow, and all the it's such a huge amount of work to do on top of a full-time job and having horses. So, yeah, I just that kind of kicked everything off. And then once you write a book, people invite you to speak at conferences. And I originally started speaking at conferences or volunteering or doing whatever I could to get there because I wanted to learn stuff and I wanted to meet
Mhm.
people that could help me. And so that made it a lot easier to get to conferences. And then I met people, and Janet met people, and then our subsequent books were gathering all these stories and experiences from people around the world to say, hey, they had similar problems to our problems, and here's how they solved it, and being able to put all that into our subsequent books. It was a great privilege, and just being able to do that, and to hear back from people of, oh, that your book really helped us, really helped our team, whatever. It's quite rewarding. We
Mhm.
didn't do it to make a lot of money. You don't necessarily make a lot of money publishing a book, but um,
Yeah, that's was about to say. I think the number of people who really make big fortune out of books is very limited, I would say.
Mike Cohn, I used to work for Mike Cohn, and he's written great books, obviously, probably sold better than ours. And he said the reason to write a book is because you have something to say.
Hmm.
And I really took that to heart. We wrote the book because we didn't want people to have to go around reinventing the wheel and solving the problems that we and other teams had already solved. Like, there's a lot more problems out there. Let's share the solutions to these basic problems so that we can all as a community move on and solve the more difficult problems. If we share what we've done, we can boost everybody up together. And that was our motivation.
Definitely, that I can. Yeah, I think that's yeah, like we said, you shouldn't write a book for money, but indeed for having sharing things, and then indeed, like you said, you can move to conferences and go to different kind of things. So yeah, that is
And I met people like you, right? When
that's
I first co-wrote Touching Extreme Program, I was like, nothing happened at first. It's like, it didn't sell very well because Alice and Wesley at that time got bought by Pearson. They fired our editor. They didn't promote our book at all, and it didn't sell very. It did make back the advance, so that was good. But it just not much happened, and but it made Mike Cohn pick up the phone and call me and have lunch, and then like maybe a year later, Mike Cohn hired me for this most awesome job I've ever had, and you know, so it started to open doors, and everything just came on from there. So I'm really glad I did it. But for a while, I was like, why did I do all that work?
and now, yeah, when you're talking about testing extreme programming, yeah,
Yeah.
that first book, huh? Okay. Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, again, this is writing a book takes an enormous amount of time, and yeah, it really is very hard for people to see. But like you say, it helped you roll into that environment. It helped you meet other people, and then
Mhm.
go to a lot of conferences and we talk to many other yeah, other people. That I think that's oh, yeah, I don't want to really say side effect because it's maybe the most effective part of writing a book, but most people don't realize it when they start writing. I think,
Mhm.
yeah, many people said very similar things here on the show about indeed that's what people have when they, yeah, when they
And
write a book.
your books are also not just spreading ideas, but making people visible and what they've contributed, right? And I think
Hmm.
that inspires other people. It's just like,
Uh,
hey,
and
I
I
could make
and
a
I think
contribution
that's
too.
and I think that's I think you even did that with more agile testing, and definitely also in agile testing condensed. You brought in other people, opinions from other people. You said, "Hey, this and that person said this about this," and I think you gave. I don't know how much room you gave to people, but you gave, I think,
Well,
quite a lot
more
of
agile
room to.
testing, we had 40 people contribute sidebars. There were 70 sidebars.
Yeah,
So that was their
that's what
stories. Yeah.
exactly that's how I
And
remember that
people,
book.
the feedback we get the most is, oh, I love the sidebars. I love the stories. People love
And
stories. They can learn from stories. So.
that's what I liked so much about that book, because indeed it was not just, hey, this is the two of us and this is what we've learned since the first book, but this is what we learned from these kind of people, and they brought in all kind of stories and showed really how it's not just okay, going to exaggerate a bit, but this is not two crazy ladies writing that we need testing, but this is a
Yeah.
whole community that says, hey,
Mhm.
we need a lot more, we need a lot more of that, and that I think is what is so wonderful with these kind of books. So yeah, so wonderful ways of looking at the world and what you achieved. So let's move to that next question. What do you consider, or do you have a personal agility tip to share?
What do you? Can you give me an example of what we would consider an agility tip?
This is the number one question I always get when I ask this question, and I purposely don't want to answer because
Oh,
my
okay,
idea is to leave it very broad,
okay.
because people might go in all kinds of directions, and that's actually how I like it. That there is no context given to you.
I think the best advice I can give people is build relationships.
Hmm.
And I was inspired by Katrina Kluge's book, Practical Guide to DevOps. She devotes quite a bit of space in that book about building relationships, building bridges, not only within your own team, but to other teams. And I took that to heart. And so every time I started a new job, and further in my career, I worked for larger companies. I originally started working just for little startups, and it was pretty easy to build a relationship in the startup because everybody's sitting together.
Mhm.
But in bigger companies, there's multiple teams. Um, I realized, and because my interests were changing, like uh, well, gosh, it's probably been, well, I don't know how many years ago, I got very interested in observability. And so it's like, I want to meet the people that are doing this, or want to help. Sometimes we didn't have an observability practice. Well, who are the engineers who are working on the monitoring and things like that? And those are probably the logical people to get to know. And so when I start a new job, I find out, like, oh, who's the manager of the platform? They have a platform team. Who's the manager? And then I send an email and say, hey, could I have like a 30-minute meeting with you sometime? And people are very friendly and they like to do that. And then it's like, hey, this was great. Could we do this every couple of weeks, or could we do this once a month? And by making that relationship, then, oh, I've made friends with the platform engineering manager. And then now my team, we're being asked to change our deployment pipeline from one tool to another. And I've been asked to write a testing strategy for that. Well, I don't know. I had never tested something like that before, but I can just get in touch with my friend and say, hey, what are the risks of this new tool? What should we be looking for? And hey, presto, I've suddenly got the material to collaborate with a platform engineer and a developer on my team to put together this testing strategy and do the testing. If I had not reached out and met that person, I could have still done it, but it would have just taken longer. I wouldn't have necessarily even known at first who to ask. So I just try to get to know people in marketing, people, in other departments, customer support, obviously. And that's from early in my career. My first job, we were in the tower at the University of Texas on the 13th floor, but our system administrators, as is was so often back in the 80s, were in the basement, and our operators were in the basement, the people who put up your tapes and all that stuff. So I would make brownies and take down to these people and make friends with them. And so if I had a particular need, like, hey, would you mount my tapes ahead of the other job? They were there to help me. So always making friends with people, that has just been a huge benefit to
Mhm.
me. And how is it agile? Because agility is all about working together. This holistic approach that Janet and
Mm.
I talk about all the time. We need everybody to work together, and you can't work together if you haven't made
If you
friends.
exactly, well, yeah, how do you work together with people? Yeah, that aren't friends, or that you don't know, or that they don't know you, and so that's something that you've learned from Katrina's book. That's what I'm learning, or
Well, I mean, I
learned.
say I did it early on, but I got more
Mm.
focused on it after I read her book. I'm like, really, I should consciously devote time to thinking more about, who do I need to get to know, who can help me, who can I help.
Mm.
Um, and people say, how do you do that? Well, asking for help is a good way. It's like, oh, ask somebody, can you draw our high level system architecture? I want to understand that better. And so maybe that's somebody on another team. They want to help, and once they help you, there's some kind of, I've learned this from Linda Rising, I don't know all the science behind it. When somebody helps you, they know you must be their friend because they helped you.
Mm.
And so you're always going to have a good relationship with them, even though they were the one making the effort.
Yeah,
uh,
that's a nice way. And just to make sure, because we talked about the book, let's also show the book. I think that's the book
oh,
that we're
thank you.
talking
Yes.
about. The book from
Great book,
Katrina.
available on Lean Pub.
Exactly. I will add the link also in the show notes for Christina's book, because I really like it. And I like indeed the fact that it's available on Leanpub, because that's a good service supporting really authors in multiple ways, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, let's move to that next question. What have you learned about remote working? And I do know that you did quite a lot of remote working before COVID. I do remember, I think on your blog or maybe in a conversation, that you showed a picture of I don't know, a computer that was on what was it, on a stool with
Mhm.
wheels so that you could walk around or something like that. And so
Yeah, a
yeah,
telepresence. That's what I called it.
telepresent. Yeah.
Yeah, I started doing remote working back in 2009. Well, it started because a company recruited me for months and months, and I finally gave in, and it turned out to be a big mistake. But they wanted me to work. They said, "Oh, you can work remotely. It's fine," because they were in Florida. I was in Colorado, and that didn't last very long. But I had a very long commute to my job because I had to be out. Well, yeah, I had to be out near to the donkeys. And so when I came back to the job I had quit to join this other company, I said, I want to come back to work, but I want to work remotely a couple days a week. And they're like, oh,
Mm.
okay, Lisa, you're such a pain, but we love you. And so we put together this telepresence, not just for me, but other people who work remotely. We had a guy in India as well. And so yeah, it had a camera, and you could control the camera remotely, and you had to have somebody wheel you around that was on wheels. But that let you hang out in conversations and meetings and stuff like that. This is 2009, so we didn't have Zoom and all that kind of stuff. Um, but so that I got comfortable with working remotely. I mean, and the problems of it as well. Um, but I think and I hear a lot of people talk about this. You can't just focus on work. You have to talk about things other than work, and that's a challenge. So when we were all remote, for my first job after the pandemic started, I was working for a team in Portugal.
Mm.
So time difference, lots of things. And they hadn't really had a lot of people working remotely. So I was worried about it, because when there's not a culture of remote working, you're not supported. People just ignore you. But
Mhm.
here they were all thrown out, and it was really hard for them because Lisbon, they have small apartments. They don't necessarily have great internet bandwidth. They don't have an office in their little apartment. It was pretty difficult for people. And fortunately, it was a wonderful company that was like, it's okay. We'll all get used to this. If you can't work 8 hours a day, don't worry. We just have to cope. And one of the things that our team did was eat lunch together. You didn't have to, but there was an open Zoom, and that was my breakfast time because of the time difference.
Mm.
And
Because
so,
so you were having breakfast and they were having lunch or
yeah,
something like that.
and Portuguese people are very serious about their food.
Mm.
So they're cooking
Most
these
Europeans are.
gourmet lunches that you would see in a restaurant. And so they show their food on very proudly, on the camera. Um, and I think doing those social things, even if you're remote, is really important because you need to get more than just the working business relationship. You have to feel comfortable talking to people. And it's nice if you can even become friends. Um, and having Slack channels or Microsoft Teams or whatever you have, where you're not just talking about work. Some teams have one where they tell dad jokes or something, or just a
Mm.
water cooler, where you can just bring. Did anybody see this show on TV or whatever it is? Um, I think that's really important to have those connections and to do things. I've been on other teams where, on Friday afternoons we'd play Scribble or Code Names. These online games together, um, and it's team building. It really does. It really does work because you laugh together and you have fun together, and so then you're much more comfortable. And of course, most teams I've worked on, we're pairing or we're doing ensemble work together, and so you really need a good degree of comfort to do that. So I think doing the
And I think,
ensembling for fun as well as for work is important.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it's also, especially because you work as a tester, you're kind of critiquing developers. And if you don't have a relationship, it becomes very quick us versus them. And if you kind of know each other, then it's like, oh, but this is just Lisa. This is not the
Yeah.
angry tester or whatever that people might think it is. And so that I think that can make a
The,
huge difference as well.
the only thing I haven't figured out how to do remotely is I think it's a pattern in Linda Rising and Maryland Mann's Fearless Change books. Do food. I use
Mm.
this a lot when I was working on site in an
But
office.
like you say, you did do food
Well, we
with
did do food,
the people there,
but
but
I
it's
but I couldn't
it's sort of
bribe people. I couldn't say, "Oh, I want to show you this new thing
ah
that we might
and
want
then
to
bring
do."
food.
And I've bought some cheese from the artisanal cheese shop everybody loves down the street. Will you come for 30 minutes to this conference room?
That is indeed a lot harder to do that. Well, you can try to find a local shop that can send them pizzas or cheese or whatever, but that might, yeah, it's still, they will be in another conference room, not in where you are, so it still is different, I would say. That's indeed, and that actually brings me to that next question, where what's a book you have read that you want to talk about?
Oh, I meant to
And
bring it down here with me. I forgot. Um, but this is just recency bias because it's the latest book. I belong to a book club uh, that's organized by Tristan Lombard and Niranjani. I can't remember her last name. And we call it a DevOps book club, but it's not a DevOps book club. We don't just read DevOps books. But this was called Hidden. Is it Hidden Women? But it's about. Let me look it up. Um, it's see, I meant to prepare this better. I saw the question. Now I can't find it. Well, shoot. We'll have to put it in the show notes. But anyway, it's about um, how research hasn't included women for decades or longer than that.
uh,
Um,
the book should be somewhere there.
Invisible Women. It's Invisible Women, not Hidden
Invisible Women,
Women.
that's the book,
Invisible
yeah.
Women.
And yeah,
Uh,
it's indeed, that's, yeah, it's a really
Data
wonderful
Bias,
book.
called Data Bias in a World Designed for Men, Caroline Criado Perez. And it's written, I think, in 2019, but very up to date, anyways. Very well written, and most of it wasn't news to me. But just how the world is designed around men. From the stories we've heard before, like how crash test dummies used to test car safety are based on male proportions, and
Hmm.
um, heart disease and heart attacks go completely diagnosed in women because our bodies are different, our symptoms are different. There's just so much data bias out there, um,
Hmm.
and but
And this is
it's
this is the book,
that's
right?
it. That's it. You're so fast at finding those things. Um, and I think, like I say, it's not new to me. I knew these things. I knew a lot of these things back in the '80s, and I'm sad that even though we knew about it back then, the research still hasn't been done. um, but it's kind of motivated a few of us in the book club. It's like we're gonna kind of try to look out for things like that. Just try to make it more visible. Just like keep a record of things we notice so we can share it with people.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's something you can do on your own team. I learned when I worked for Pivotal, um, we kind of harangued the management into doing something about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which of course now is a bad word here in the oligarchy. But
Hmm.
um, one of the things we did was a little small group. They gave us time to have a little small group discussions, like sit around with 3 other people and talk about your experiences of feeling excluded or whatever. And one of the we were pair programming there, and so there were not that many women, but if a man and a woman were pair programming at a pair programming station and somebody else came up to ask them a question, they inevitably looked at the man. They didn't make eye contact with the woman. And I was like, wow, I probably was doing that, you know? It just made me aware of it. And so being aware of an unconscious bias is not necessarily that helpful, but it's still good information and it's good to talk about it. But things like that. Um, and so I think that if we can just be aware of those things and find a way to share them with other people to say, hey, we're not thinking about these people, or we're not thinking about these situations where people might be excluded or whatever it is. Um, we need diversity. We know
Hmm.
that companies with diverse workforces are more profitable and everybody's happier. Um, but we have to accommodate that diversity. We have to make people feel included, and that's how we make great teams. Build that level of trust. And so anything that we can do to kind of maybe catalog, I don't know, maybe that's the wrong word, but just publicize. These things could happen to you, or you may experience these things, or you may not notice you're doing these things. And so, you know,
Yeah, I like that making it visible of things what are happening. And in Dutch there was, let me see if I can bring it up again. No, that's not it. In Dutch there was a book that was written that is a little bit doing that, and that's what I'm trying to bring up here, which is Women's Body. The name is Women's
oh,
Body and What We Don't Know, and it I think it builds a little bit on the earlier book that you talked about, Invisible Women, but this
mm-hmm,
is really a story about women and all certain diseases that they had, and indeed the heart attacks and things like
mm-hmm,
that, and endometriosis, menopause, a couple of
mm-hmm,
other things,
mm-hmm.
where they talk, and they it's both the stories, a little bit of research because not much research has been done, but it really is well, I think it's a popular book in Belgium that even more people should read to realize that, hey, there is much more. The thing about a heart attack, it's like it's incredible that even doctors these days don't know how to recognize then when a woman has a heart attack, that it's really is a different, yeah, that you have to ask for different symptoms. And yeah, that's incredible that we don't have that these days.
Yeah, and
uh,
then that same team I was working on, one of the reasons we kept lobbying to try to have these discussions, we pair programmed, and the company policy was, you come in the morning, you have breakfast, they catered in breakfast, and then 9 o'clock, you sit down with your pair for that day, and you pair program until 5 o'clock. And then, they were having a hard time hiring any women. They would interview women, they wouldn't come to work there. Well, women who have children may
they
not be
want to
able to
have,
sit down and pair 8 hours a day or even 7 hours a day,
or have breakfast, they want to have
or
breakfast with their
have
children maybe.
breakfast, or women who are going to school. I mean, anybody could be going to school, right? And men could have childcare duties too. But let's face it, the data
Mhm.
shows more women. And so, or they might be taking care of another family member, aging parent, whatever it is. And so, of course, women were not going to come in to work in that environment because they knew it wouldn't work for them.
Mm.
And it's just like, wow, why can't you think through these things? It's like one of the things in Invisible Women is women use mass transport more than men.
Mm. And
And
so
a
because of
few
that,
countries have realized this. So they try to make improvements to make mass transit safer and better for women. And the other thing is, like, women they don't just go to work. They drop the kids off at school. They run by the pharmacy. They run by the library. They're doing all these errands going to and from work. And data shows that happens more for women than men. And so when you think about all these things, well, we could do some simple things to accommodate to make it easier for the people who have to do that. So I shouldn't get on my soapbox too much, but it was just a good
no,
reminder. I have unconscious bias too, and I need to straighten myself out
well,
too.
all of us, we have that, and I think this is why we need diversity. I mean, I yeah, I'm one of these men that do read some of these books, and even there, I've noticed sometimes in teams like, hey, there was still something that I don't know, even if I know much more about some of these issues, and that's why we need women, why we need people from color, and other kind of things to look for, yeah, other ways of looking at the world, I would say. And that brings in most cases, yeah, a lot of value, for when we do that. And that's why I like so much that you shared earlier on, that this is, it brings, what you said earlier on, it brings much more profit. So it's not
Hmm.
just, oh, this is good for women, it's good for, it typically is good for everybody, but
Hmm.
it's also good for the companies. And this is so strange about the whole anti-DUI. What's happening is like you're throwing away also profit, just because you're whatever ism you have. That's really is very strange. I want to move to that next question. What question do you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
I forgot to think about this one in advance.
Well, even if you think in advance, I've noticed that with many people, it's a hard question to know and to think.
Well, gosh, maybe maybe because I'm the far edge of career trajectory.
Hmm.
I'm beyond retirement age, so maybe the question is like, how do you decide when to retire, or what do you do? What life transition do you make when you
Hmm.
hit 65 or whatever age? Because that's an interesting struggle, because our identities are tied up with our professional lives, right?
Hmm.
My identity, I had a very difficult time back in the late 90s because, like I say, I always had horses. And just a series of things happened. I shouldn't go into it, it's too long of a story. But, anyways, I couldn't afford to own the kind of horse I wanted to own anymore, because I wanted a horse,
Hmm.
higher level dressage, whatever. And so the horse I had was not suited to what I wanted to do with the horse. And I didn't want to sell him because I didn't want somebody else to think he should do that. So I gave him to my sister. So then I didn't have any more money to buy a horse. And I could still ride horses. There were plenty of horses I could part lease. There are always people who need a horse to be ridden. But my identity was always, I'm a person with a horse. And
Hmm.
that was very difficult to get over. Eventually I became a person with a donkey. But um and so the same with my profession. And when I got older and a little less confident, what if can't get this job, or I can't get this work? What does that say about me? Because I was so tied up with my professional identity. And over the last few years, I've tried to separate that out. But I think when you retire, you really have to give that up. It's like, I'm not a tester on a team, or I'm not a testing consultant anymore. What am I?
Hmm.
I obviously, like Janet's not having any trouble transitioning to be a retired person who is learning to do better paintings. But not that that's all she's doing, but um, some people have an easier transition, and some people have. My father worked well into his 80s because he had his own company, and it was who he was. Um, yeah, I don't really have an
Hmm.
answer for that question.
Well,
I
I
just
think
do what I
it's
enjoy, right?
that I think it's partially an answer. Like, okay, that this is why I like this question so much, because it's still something you're into the process and struggling with it, or like, yeah, discovering who is Lisa without a job. Is that the one that you want to be? How long there is? Well, we have, you talked briefly about the book from Linda Rising. She's a nice example of someone who's still working. I think I have no idea how many hours she's working, but probably less than I'm doing. But for her, it's like, okay, I'm still part of this community, and I
Mhm.
do read research books, and she talks about it. So that's and I can, for me, I can see the same thing. I know that in Belgium we change a lot of laws, so retirement age is keep postponing, and I have a lot of friends who complain about it. And for me, and just this is just for me, I'm like, I can still see myself doing a lot of that because I like what I do. I'm not sure how much my identity is linked to that. I will probably discover that when I'm not doing a full time job anymore. But yeah, that's I can see that as a very interesting question to think about. And yeah, that's
Yeah, and especially, I mean, my financial advisor has told me for the last few years, Lisa, you can't afford to retire.
hmm. Which is a
But
good thing. Then it's a
well,
choice.
but then look what's happening to our country.
Hmm.
And so they may take away Medicare. They probably will take away Medicare. They probably will take away Social Security, even though Social Security is taxes I paid in for 50 some odd years. Um, so that makes me feel like, I've got all these animals. They depend on me. And
Hmm.
lately the vet bills have been expensive. I've got
Because
aging
the
donkeys.
the exactly the donkeys are not getting any
My
younger
dad,
either.
the oldest donkey's 39 years old.
Wow.
Um, and so I feel like I actually need to stay employable. I don't. I get some paid work. I really really enjoy it. Do some training classes, do some consulting, and I feel like I need to be able to get that, or maybe sometime I'll feel like I need another full time job. I don't know who will hire an old person, but with the economic uncertainty
A
in this
wise person,
country,
because
yeah,
you
and
learned a
even
lot of things. Yeah.
and even our investments. Well, it looks great now, and they're pretty conservative investments, but who knows what's going to happen? This is a crisis. This is a big crisis.
Mhm.
It's very, very difficult to live with right now,
I have
and I'm
no idea indeed. Well, if you look at just what happened in the first, what is it, now 2 months, and
yeah,
compared, yeah, that
yeah.
what else will happen in the next 4 years?
Terrible things that happen,
Um,
and I mean, I don't know that I'm being overly paranoid when I go out to these protests and wave my sign around.
mm,
Is someday is some AI going to pick up? Oh, that's that Lisa Crispin. Let's send her off to a prison camp. It's happened before.
mhm.
So it's a scary time. Anyway, so that's all wrapped up now. I was already struggling. Do you know when I'm on my deathbed, am I going to happily remember the time I spent writing a book or helping somebody? Or am I going to happily remember the time I spent with my donkeys or my husband or some hobby I don't really have?
I don't know. Well, I think, well, I don't know, but definitely, I like spending time with you, either at the conference or at other places. So I do hope there's more than you. Then yeah, there's also the fun part in other things, I think. Um, but yeah, it's a really good question, and tied. I didn't see that coming when you said it, but I can definitely see it tied back to what's happening in your country. Yeah, like we're
Well,
recording
it'll
this
affect
in.
the whole. Sadly, it's going to affect the whole world. So.
Exactly. But it's already affecting the whole world if you see
Mhm,
things.
mhm.
And just for the record, we're recording this on the 28th of March, 2025. No idea, well, because this
When
will
you
be
watch this,
probably
yeah.
when this will published, it will be at least a month, probably even 2 months later, and the world has will be shifted a lot more, I think,
But
by
it's
that.
these personal connections that keep me going.
Hmm. And talking about personal connections, who do you think I should ask next?
Um, hmm. Well, again, I can't help but be biased of all my many friends, but I think it would be interesting to talk to Ashley Hunsberger. I don't know if you know her or know of her.
No.
Um, but she and I have done a lot of workshops and tutorials together, and we started off with testing in the context of continuous delivery. And because I learned a lot from her when it was something I was struggling with my own team back in the day. But she's moved from the sort of testing type of job. She's gotten a graduate degree in, I don't know, it's like industrial psychology or something. I'm not sure what her degree's in, but her job is to be in charge of developer experience, making sure people on development teams get job satisfaction, because we know from Google's Dora research that people who enjoy their jobs are more productive, their companies are more successful, they're more successful. And part of what makes them happy, also according to Dora research, is focusing on our end users and knowing that, oh, we released this feature to them and it's what they wanted. That's a really satisfying thing. Anyways, she knows a whole lot about this whole DevX area. I think this is an area we're starting to hear a lot of buzz about. It's nice to have hype about something besides AI. and I think she'd be an interesting person to talk to because she has that background and um,
I'll definitely
so
look forward to
key.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really, yeah. Like I said, I don't think I know her, so I'll definitely will ask afterwards to get the contact details. But we'll see about that later. Yeah. You also mentioned briefly Dora. I know that recently you've been, I think, rather involved in the Dora community, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they
Or
comment. They say we're Dora guides. This is volunteer. Again, this is because I have time to try to do something for the community. Um, Even though Linda Rising says that we humans don't pay attention to facts, we're not rational, and I'm sure she's right. I like facts. I like research, and I like that the Dora research over the years has backed up everything that I believed and that Jan and I both believe from our experience. That we
Mm,
couldn't necessarily back it up with numbers, but we're like, well, we believe that when the developers and testers work together on the test automation, that we succeed with it better.
mm,
We believe that having good documentation is beneficial. Well, guess what? High quality documentation means higher performing teams and organizations. So all kinds of things like that. And I've just really enjoyed. I've learned a lot being part of the community. I'm trying not to, it's really hard for me now because Google is part of the oligarchy that's doing ridiculously
mm.
stupid things. I can't forgive them for putting Gulf of America on maps. But I feel like the Dora team, that's not their fault.
Just for
um,
your information, if I look into the maps on in Belgium, I see both names. So I see
oh well, thank God.
the old name and the new name, because I think the rest of the world doesn't automatically agree with the new world. So
Thank
yeah,
you, thank
that's
you. But anyways, what was interesting is like a few years ago, after I'd become independent, I met my friend Blaze Pebble I think through the Cucumber open source community. And he said, "Oh, you should join the Dora community." And I think, "Oh, I've always been interested and always work with operations specialists and site reliability engineers and all those people, but I'm not one." And he said, "I think it's okay. I think it's okay. I think you'll enjoy it." And indeed, it's a very welcoming community. And I find that mainly what we do is we'll have like a 10-minute talk from somebody and then a lean coffee discussion about it. And the topics always come down to quality and testing because that's really what it's all about. Um, so yeah,
Mhm.
so I've learned a lot and really enjoyed that. And like I say, developer experience is one of the big themes now that people want to talk about, as well as measuring things. I mean, the measuring thing is so that you can try an experiment. Again, Linda Rising, small frugal experiments. Your team can try something, but you have to know how you're going to measure whether that thing is working or not, so that you can
Hmm.
look in a couple weeks and say, yeah, it's getting us toward our goal of, no, it's not. Let's try something else. So getting ideas on how to do that is really important. And so, yeah, I encourage everybody to go to uh, Dora.community is the website.
And that's the
Yeah,
website in the Dora.community where people can. And yeah, I have to admit, it's the a lot of the events are in my calendar as optional, and because of a lot of the podcast, I haven't really been able to join in regularly. But yeah,
the
it's
time zone's
been
not very friendly either, and they're trying
sometimes there
to,
are things on the
yeah,
evening for me that
yeah,
works out, but then I have conversations like
yeah,
this one, and then I skip it. So yeah, it's
yeah. They're starting up kind of a chapter in India because
hmm,
the times really don't work for them. So they're hoping to sort of get more Dora guides around the world that can help with
that can
this.
help out in doing these things. Well, again, this is something as a nice example of what you've been doing for the community. So I want to thank you for that as well. Um, Lisa, it's been a wonderful conversation that we've been having for, I think, an hour and a half, maybe a little less. If people want to reach out to you, what would be a good way to connect with you?
Well, my website is lisacrispin.com, and there's a contact page there. You can get in
And that
touch with
should be
me.
the contact page, indeed.
Yeah, and you can even book a little video chat with me. I love to talk about testing, donkeys, lots of other things. So always up for that. And I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Blue Sky, and I'm everywhere as just Lisa
And
Crispin.
LinkedIn, I added. I didn't add Blue Sky yet, and the X I don't want to add anymore for obvious reasons. I would say. It's been a wonderful time again,
Oh,
like
thank
always,
you.
and we have this
I'm so
conversation
happy to be
really fun.
part of this. It's just I love all the who was agile. I love the
You,
diversity of our community. It's just really great.
I do agree with that. You've been from on my list from the very beginning, but then I talked to Janice. It's like, okay, let's wait a little bit because I still want diversity and not
Yeah,
just
not
Janet
always.
and Lisa. But now, more than 3 years later, I'm like, really, that is more than overdue. So I'm really
Well,
happy
thank
that you
you.
still
Thank you. I
accept it.
really appreciate this. And it's really an honor to be a part of it.
And you do know that next time you're in Belgium, well, you're invited to the new house, and you can see the difference
Gotta get
because,
back there. I love Ghent. It's a beautiful place. I love the food,
well,
love the chocolate. And I haven't seen my relatives there in years now. So yeah, really gotta get back.
well, once you're here, we'll definitely meet up again. So,
Sounds great.
okay, see you.
Thanks.
Thank you for
Bye.
watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.